Let's take a look at the fundamentals of animation here in Cinema 4D. We have this box that's going down and being animated along its path. And if you notice here, we have these blue boxes at 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and 70. And these are called keyframes. We've got the power slider here, and we're just scrubbing our timeline. And based on these keyframes, the box is moving along the path. Now, the keyframes correspond to the black dots on the animation path here. So we go to 40, we can see that this black dot is 40 here. Now over here we have our play buttons, and this is very much like a VCR of old. So we can go to the next frame here. We can go to the next keyframe. We can go backwards a frame, back to the next keyframe, and we can go to the start of the animation. And of course, we have the play button. Next to our play buttons, we have our record buttons, and this is going to allow us to record keyframes in different ways. And next to those, we have the properties that are going to be recorded. So if we have these highlighted, we can record keyframes in all of these different ways. So if we uncheck position and rotation and parameter, then we would only be able to record keyframes in scale. All right. So we can just turn these back on. Typically, you're going to want these on. Now, if we hit Control or Command D on our keyboard, we will go to the project settings. You can also get to the project settings by going to Edit Project Settings. And we're going to have some parameters over here. They're going to have to do with animation. So for instance, over here we have our frames per second, or FPS, which right now is defaulted at 30 frames per second, which is standard for video. So if we are playing the animation and we come over here and we change this from, let's say, 30 to 15, if we watch the timeline or the power indicator here, you can see that this is updated on the fly. And turn that back to 30. Also, if you wanted to have some sort of a slow motion type effect, you could really kick this up to say, let's say 120 frames per second. And now you can see how the animation has slowed down considerably. I'm going to go ahead and take that back to 30 for the moment. Now, underneath these, we have the minimum time and the maximum time. And so that is going to correlate to what we have here in the timeline. So we have 0 to 70 frames, and you can see we have 0 to 70. So if we wanted to change that to 90, then we've also updated our timeline here to 90 frames. So now we're 0 to 90. The preview minimum, preview maximum, if we only wanted to say, look at frames 20 through 50 in our timeline here, we could just change that to 20 and 50. And then we're only working with those frames. Again, let's go ahead and change these back. 0 and 70. Let's go ahead and take our maximum time back to 70. And we're where we started from. Now, we also have control on the range selector itself here. So if we wanted to pull this, we can adjust our timeline that way. If we wanted to double click, we could set this to, say, 50. And now our timeline has updated to 0 to 50. Now we can go ahead and just pull that back out to get our original frames to show again. So basically, this is just going to not change the number of frames in your animation, but change the preview frames. So 0 to 40, but we still have the other frames in there. Okay, so these are just some of the basics of animation here in Cinema 4D.